But I'll begin today's seminar series by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we're meeting on today, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and pay my deepest respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues and your ongoing spiritual connections to land, sea, and community. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So today we have the absolute privilege of hearing from Professor Jackie Huggins, AMFAHA. Professor Huggins is a Budjera and Birragubba Juru with 45 years in Aboriginal affairs. She's currently the Director of Research within the UQ HMBS faculty based at Hurston. Today, Professor Huggins' presentation will talk to truth-telling, treaty and healing, and the importance of these social and these to social and emotional health and well-being. Jackie will also speak about the aftermath of the referendum and what it has meant for Indigenous people and our allies. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Jackie Huggins.
Wadamuli Naya Bidra. My name is Jackie Huggins, and I always wish to acknowledge the country on which I have been living for about 65 years now, and that is, on and off. I go to other places, of course. That's the Yagara and the Turrbal peoples of our land here in Brisbane, and to thank them really warmly for having me here, nourishing me on their country. Yes, as a little bit about myself, I guess, before I launch into this wonderful talk for you all. You'll know I'll use humour, right? So you can laugh. And I think humour is one of the essence of the way we do business with our people and with others in terms of relating to people and to get our messages across. While some of it is totally deadly serious, you know, we have to allow for that that liberation of certainly our feelings and the feelings of others. So yes, I grew up here in Brisbane, postcode 4077, which you all know as Inala. I did all my schooling there. My mother was a single mum. My dad died at the age of 38. He was a prisoner of war in the Burma-Thailand Railway. But he did come back and father 3 healthy children. My mother was rounded up in the back of a cattle truck and sent to Cherbourg Aboriginal Mission, where she grew up. So my ties are definitely to Cherbourg and that area. And we're doing some fantastic work with that community right now. It's anybody doing any work with Cherbourg at all? No. Okay. We are, and I'm sure that will extend, you know, right across. Yeah, I kind of grew up here. I moved back and forward to that thing that Noel Pearson calls orbiting. Went to orbit to Adelaide. I did some studies at Flinders University. Then I went to Canberra, where I took on a public servant career for about 12 years. Felt it was never for me, so got out of that. And then I actually, this is my first place of working. Where's Sherwood Road? Just over here? Am I pointing in the right direction? At the ABC. Yeah, I was 16 years of age when I worked at the ABC. That was my first job. After, in those days, of course, all we all did was do business college and then go out and get a job so that we could support our parents and our families. So that's my first job. The only little black girl there used to come in on the train from Inala and go over there and work. experienced quite some racism. I was the only little black person there. But it really taught me the skills of good combat, how to tease, how to communicate with white fellas, how to do all these other wonderful things. So, and now I've come to full circle. I'm now the Elder in Residence at the ABC. So that's a position I took on this year. And that is about, in response to the Terry Janke report on racism, they wanted a person with integrity, cultural authority, etc., to fulfil the role of the Elder in Residence as a cultural safety mechanism, but also to talk to senior management and to, kind of talk right across the board in relation to the matters of ABC television. I said it would be great to get more black faces on there. It would be great to get more stories of strength, not deficit. So I want those positive things. I went and visited Gardening Australia and Play School, and I said, you need to, there's a lot of bushwalker out there, so forth, what our people are doing. They said, yeah, we'd love to do a show on it. So those kind of little incremental things, I think, will help us. I'm also, it seems, when you get to my age, you become this Elder in Residence type person for a organisation called Common Threads, and we've just been establishing our own organisations. It's a group of young, fearless campaigners who work in deaths in custody, domestic violence, homelessness, you name it, climate change, the whole bit. And what we've been doing with them is working on the strengths-based language that they need to go out with rather than the deficit, even though it's very hard not to use that when you're talking deaths in custody and so forth. Also, the Patron Sisters Inside, their organisation for women in incarceration, and together Quentin Bryce and I are the patrons of Reconciliation Queensland as well. And I have a deep and abiding history and interest in reconciliation, because I do believe that, when we work with good people, we can overcome a lot of the difficulties that, our people do face in our country. So I guess that's me, and I've had, yes, skin in the game for 45 years now, probably 46, but who's counting? I will reach my milestone of 50 years, I'm sure, particularly in this job that I've got now, which is fabulous. I did my undergraduate here at UQ in history, a double major, history and anthropology. I taught here for about 14 years over at St Lucia in the Indigenous Studies area. And then I was in semi-retirement when Thelma Parker tapped me on the shoulders and said, do you want to come back? And I said, what is this? Hotel California? Of course I'll come back. You give me my dream job, which is to work on truth-telling, treaty and healing. And so I've been there since December and still working out. I don't have staff, there's just a package of me. But still working on developing up what that research might look like. And I'll talk a little bit about that very soon. But I want to give you the background as to what treaty is and truth-telling and how that applies to healing. Because, people just don't get. I know you're all converted and you do get that if we don't look at the causes of our situation, then we're never going to get anywhere to being well and healthy people. So what's stopping us is a lot of things. As you know, our country has had a very brutal history. It's been very brutal. You know, we find it hard sometimes, well, most times, to talk about the unpalatables of our history. Mind you, there have been some fairly good things too that have happened to us, but in the long run, it's been quite negative. So unless we fix that basic premise of who we are and the kind of soul-destroying events and untruths that have happened to us, then we will never get to that next stage. So for treaty in 2018, I was approached by the then Jackie Trad. Many of you will know Jackie. She was the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs at that time. And she said, setting up a treaty committee. This is 2 weeks after I'd come back from being, we'd certainly been voluntarily liquidated from the National Congress of Australia's First Peoples. ATSIC was not our last representative body, people. It was the National Congress of Australia's First People. We ran that for 10 years. Yet, we certainly didn't get the amplification that ATSIC did, but we did some good stuff. So I was the co-chair of that. I came back to Queensland. 2 weeks later, I got the call. The National Congress was defunded by Scott Morrison. When you dare to challenge any government in the country, they will cut your funding quite clearly, and we knew we were going into that. And I often look at the referendum and the, Congress now, just in terms of the time lag and where would we be now. But look, that's all past history. It might have been a different scenario as to how far we got. Now we're struggling to get a voice in our country. A little bit more about that later. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But so I took that job on as the co-chair of the eminent panel. And there were people on there like Quentin Bryce. Once again, I call her my partner in crime because she really does believe in, the justice for our people. And she believes in, getting us true perspective from everyone. But Quentin, there was Kerry O'Brien, who was saying wonderful things at that time and still is. Michael Lavarch, first Attorney General of the leading government. He was an Attorney General when he was 33, the youngest one anyway. So there were some really quite famous people on there who wanted to work with us. And we always worked, unlike other places, where we always would have the white in there with us, because that's the strategic goodness of it. You need to have not only us, but you need to have white allies and friends who will come and support you. So right through this, we had consultations around the state. Over 1,500 people attended. There were 12 locations, and we did our consultations on treaty and what it might mean. The first thing they said to us, two things, is that we've never ceded sovereignty in our country, and we want you to tell the truth-telling first. Because without that, it won't work unless we tell the truth. And we all knew that. We all thought that was possible too. So I spent 5 years out of the 6 years on that treaty and truth-telling exercise. The last one I didn't. The last year I didn't come on for the committee that was there, but I co-chaired the other committees. And excuse me, I've just got a have a sore throat, but it's nothing. It's asthma and all that stuff. So So from there, cut a long story short, that went to, we had an act that was passed in 2022 that received bipartisan support for the path to treaty and truth-telling. Out of that would come truth-telling. And we were granted, mind you, $300 million as a future fund. Eye-watering, you know, we just, Mick Gooder and I at that time were the co-chairs. And, you know, I remember ringing him up and I said, oh, guess how much we got? And he goes, oh, 3 million. I said, oh, come on. Had another 10. And he goes, 30, that's pretty good. I said, keep going. He goes, oh my God, not 300 million. I said, yes. And we both cried. It was just incredible that we would negotiate that through government. But that was a goodwill then with the Labor government. We were related at this. And that money was just to be spent on the process of treaty and truth-telling. But we know where it's gone now, don't we? You know, it's gone to other causes. And it was never meant for Close the Gap. It was never meant. When this government came into being, they said, we're going to use that money for Close the Gap and give places like Arakoon and other places water. Well, that's a human right. And housing, that's a human right. And you should be taking it out of your own budgets. But, you know, anyway, this is what they do to us. They do to us all the time. So the bipartisanship happened. We had David Crisafulli praising it and saying it's really good. And then we were hit with the referendum. We were hit with the referendum. 2 days later, we were told that truth-telling and treaty will not go ahead in our state. And we were flabbergasted. Not surprised, I guess, in a way, but to see that real, you know, turning point. And I've written about this, and hopefully very soon I'll have my paper published, either through Poche or somewhere else about, you know, the history of that circumstance. But just to really show and highlight, you know, what an incredible difference that made, and how how it was expected, but it wasn't expected. So 2 days after the referendum, 2 days, they said they were not going to do it. And that this referendum, because 60% of Australians didn't want it. Didn't want what? It was not a referendum, was it, about truth-telling and treaty. It was a referendum about the voice in the Constitution. And that was it. But people just didn't get it. They equated everything black with everything like treaty and truth-telling and rights, so Indigenous rights for our people. So that didn't get through to the wider public. Of course, I was on the referendum committee as well that the federal government set up. And like all of you, I'm sure, we were just, it's taken a while. I said I'd give myself a year to mourn it and then get on with it, which I have. But still, people are still deeply, deeply hurting from the referendum and the effects of that referendum. But the way in which the Queensland government, not surprisingly, did this was just, it was very shameful to us. But what's happened, I know, and I've seen it. I speak on reconciliation and everything, lots of things across the country still. And I see the pushback. There has been a pushback here. I mean, even creating that position for BUQ is a first of its kind. That's a great pushback there. And also there's been a position in Sydney University for a professor of truth-telling. So it's kind of like happening happening around some academic circles. So we've yet to, get on with it and realise the potential of what it can do. But I just want to get back to, how these things are most important for our health and well-being as Indigenous people, but also for the wider community to come with us and to support us in that. Because until we get to the root of the problem, we're never going to heal. We're never going to have those deep conversations that we really do need to have through the truth-telling aspect. Now, what happened after the referendum were two communities, Cherbourg and Minjerribah, Stradbroke Island, said even though the government had squashed it, they said they will go ahead with their truth-telling exercises. And they did. In Cherbourg, they got about 200 people. In Minjerribah, they had a good crowd too, and both Indigenous, non-Indigenous people, because we always said this is just not about us. To have the truth in our country, we need white fellas to tell their stories too. And, like years ago in my radical days, and, in my 30s and so forth, I never thought white fellas had a story. But no, they don't have the story. We're the only ones have it. I was wrong. Of course I was wrong. And, I found reconciliation, or it found me, and then we had to talk these things through. But, of course, everyone has a story. And all those people who came to our consultations, well, most of them said, we want to tell our truths too, both as victims and as perpetrators. And what my family did to your people on the Darling Downs or something, I want to talk about that, So we wanted to be trauma informed, of course, that's really important on both sides for people to have those access to counsellors and people that would be able to, progress them through their stories and so forth. We'd organise for all of that, but we didn't get too far. So with the treaty and truth telling, there was one part where we were very hopeful, so hopeful that this could get up. And unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So we had to find other ways to manoeuvre, other ways to be able to try to bring everyone together, but not lose sight of the prize that. And despite what government would tell us, we would absolutely wait for a next progressive government to allow us to tell our stories and to run those processes of treaty and truth-telling and healing. And this is where UQ opened up and said, we're going to get some hopefully we're going to get some community researchers on soon and get all those stories, bring stories to the fore, have it as a repository here in we're not sure how the IP works around that, where we'll put that, but we're in talks with Dr. Terry Jenke, who will, and Cherbourg's in talks with her too, who will let us know, so that when a progressive government comes on, they'll say, "Where's all the stuff?" And we'll say, "We've got it here. It's here in our archive. It's here that you don't need to invent the wheel." Those three committees did a massive amount of work. They were independent of government and they did a massive amount of work and the information is still there. It's such a rich treasure that we can't afford to lose at all. So that when governments get on, they want to restart the process up, which they will. They have to. We cannot go on in our country without a true sense of truth-telling and telling it how it is from all sides. And that will happen. That will happen one day. I hope it's within my lifetime. I'm sure it will be. but I'm devoting the rest of my career to making sure that happens. So it's been a big journey in terms of trying to assemble it and get our people on and to do the research and to get those stories up for us. From that, hopefully with the treaties take a long time, they do. However, Victoria will have their first treaty at the end of the year through the Europe Commission. They've had they've had massive support from their government, the Labor government there, and they've had a good run of it. It's been about 5 or 6 years, and they've done some really fantastic stuff. You might have seen they finished that walk and they handed their report in. So it will be interesting. I think the next election's there March next year or something. So they've had a run on it to be able to know that when they get their treaty, the sky's not going to fall in, like native title, remember? Taking all the land and, the blackboard that Howard put up there, it didn't happen. And it won't happen for treaty either, because, treaties are a negotiated agreement by which you have to agree, the two parties, in terms of what you want out of it and what the others want out of it too. We know that treaties across the world have failed. Mostly, every treaty, I think, in the USA has been broken. Look at the Treaty of Waitangi in New Zealand at the moment. That's trying to be dismantled as well. The Maoris are facing severe problems as we are here, but not as bad as it could have been, people. Had we not got the last government in, it would have been atrocious. But they're having their own battles. The Sami people are the most successful, I think, in Finland, Norway and Sweden, with their parliament. They have a Sami parliament that drives their issues through. And they've just had a major win just recently in terms of legislation of self-determination, self-management for them. So that's good. But I think it's really important for all of us, and I know that you will, as researchers, to look at the global trends and what happens there, because whilst we are a little island, we're not an island by itself. We can work with other groups internationally across the board to learn off them and for them to learn off us as well. So we're looking forward to a global reach. We'll be going to the WIPSI conference in November as well, and I'm sure that some of you might. The World Education Conference to look at other best practices in the world, because we know that we don't have all the answers and we can just blend from them. So I've been up to talk. I can talk forever, but talk for half an hour. Half an hour. Excuse me. Well, I've got a bad cough. Half an hour to 11:30 to 11:40. I might just take another 5 minutes to just round this off, and then we can have a nice little discussion, because I'd love to hear what you think about it. And just in terms of the healing, I'm not a health practitioner. I know health, but I've never really worked solidly in that area. But I know that my dear old mum used to always say to me, there's one really important thing in your life, and that is your health. And really, as you get older, you realise that's so true. I love getting older. I really do. I love getting this wise eldership stuff that they purport to say I have. But, the health, your health of your body is always, not the same as when you're 70, when you're 30 and 40. But in our, as you know, in our community, in our age group, it is something to be honoured and to be treasured, to be an elder, and to be a person with, that deep sense of knowledge and the wherewithal to have gone down those paces and those streets and those ways of doing things. And for me, it's about trying to find some shortcuts for our younger generation of people. And I've got to say, I'm so happy with young people these days because they are really brown. And when I call a young person, I say anything under 65. They are just so grounded in their culture, they know their history, and they really, they have academic qualifications too, which I'm very proud of, knowing that, education has been the liberation of my life in many ways, and that they are coming up to be, that next generation of leaders. Did anybody go to the Lowager conference? Wasn't that fabulous? We got epidemiologists, we've got GPs, we've got kidney doctors. I met one from Darwin. She's a Torres Strait girl. Both are based in Darwin, which is really necessary. But all kinds of specialists, all kinds of allied health people. It's just so marvellous to see. And one of my best friends is Pat Anderson, who you might know from the Uluru Dialogues, Dialogues from the Heart. And Pat and I said we never thought we would see this kind of, explosion in our lifetimes of young people coming through and getting those degrees. And I see them over at Hurston, of course. I think we've got about 40 doctors, GPs going through now. And it's, it's really great to see. And I know that and as researchers too, I think that's absolutely very important. We've got to keep the research up, apply it. And with our project and what I'm doing, that stuff will be based on evidence-based. So, people can't quibble about it or say it wasn't true or they're just making it up. Well, ours will be evidence-based by the time, others come around to pick it up. So hopefully something will happen and, hopefully in a hurry too, because, with our health, we just can't afford to wait. And, I know that James and Gail Garvey are doing some magnificent work with their teams in terms of those pressure points of every disease really across the whole spectrum of our lives. So, I might stop there and happy to receive your comments, questions, criticisms, whatever. I see my colleague Nick Endicott there. Nick, will you show your face? Nick works with me over at Hurston as well. With Thelma, no, she's sorry. Sorry, Nick, you probably went out to get a cup of tea or something. Go somewhere. Sorry, I won't.
There she is. Thanks, Jackie. Sorry, I had to juggle my windows. I've got lots of windows.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see everyone.
Good to see you. Yeah, great. Nick, did you want to add something? Oh, I even forgot to talk about the Wisdom Council. Can you do a quick blurb on them for 2 seconds? Two
sure.
minutes?
Yeah, sure. So the faculty has a Wisdom Council for Indigenous Knowledges. Jackie's on that as well. And it's 12 members and 2 ex officio members from the health sector. So academics, community controlled sector, a whole range of different experts, all First Nations. And they offer, it's really intentionally built into the structure of the university as well. So it's not as kind of standalone advisory body that we seek input from. It's built into the structures of the university. So the executive dean, Danny Liu, and the executive team seek advice and guidance from the Wisdom Council as well. And so they will endorse documents like the growth strategy that has been developed, and various policies that we have as well.
Yeah, James is on that, and so is Gail Garvey. Heavy hitters, I tell you. Yeah, it's great. We all meet very regularly, about once a month, to and it's the only one of its kind across any university in Australia. And we're very well received at the Lowager Foundation meeting that we had, and I think there are some people wanting to apply their own, their own committees now. So that's a good thing.
Jackie, do you want me to show you the Wisdom Council photo?
If you could quickly.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how big it will be on the screen for people, but. And we work to 4 pillars, and truth telling and treaty is one of those as well.
I have to switch my headphones. It's not letting me share, so I won't. I don't have permissions to share.
All right. Okay.
All right, Jackie.
Yeah.
Just listening to you speak, I'm really, I don't know, struck by your, despite all the setbacks, despite the fact that in some ways, even on an international stage, the way we engage with our Indigenous peoples is, embarrassing. It's just, it's sometimes we feel like we're a long way behind where we need to be. But your, I don't know, optimism, resilience, I don't know, just focus on the future.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? How do you keep that? I don't know, how do you keep that motivation?
Yeah, well, I think it might have come back to my mother, who put through all the horrible things in missions and reserves. She was jailed. She was jailed for seeing boys at the age of 14. Hello. Put into jail, bread and water for a week. I mean, wouldn't that make you angry? And I saw my mother not feel anger or bitterness about that. And I said, why don't you? And I took on that anger for a long time, about her circumstance. And she'd just say to me, oh, well, Jackie, that's history. That's what happened to us. We can't change it, And I kind of, as I grew older, I didn't understand that then, but as I do now much better. And and she'd always say, you can get more flies with honey, eh? What's that expression? Not with vinegar or something. Something like that, anyway. And I just think that was a stupid thing to say, but it's true. It's true. If you are diplomatic about it, some people call me charming, and that too, but still kind of, you hold your position and you don't give up on it. It works, it really does. And I've always applied that. That keeps me going, but also the injustice of what has happened to my people in this country. That's the prime motivator of me doing the work I do, and I have to do it because, and bring people on board. I mean, that's the kind of leadership as well. You bring people. James does that here now. I know that. I know that for a fact. He would be embarrassed that maybe I said that, or would he? But, I've seen him, and just the way, people will flock to him as well to get his pearls of wisdom. But, yeah, it's just something that has been a growing consciousness of mine. I didn't have it in I'd say right up to my 50s. My 50s, I had to work stuff through and still be, so angry about and so unapologetic. And people who I taught here 30 years ago at UQ say to me, wow, you're kind of like a different person, I would take no prisoners. I would take no prisoners when I lectured. We didn't have those, what do you call them, cat things? What's it called when you get evaluated? and they put you down.
Yeah.
What's it called?
The student evaluations, technical checklist.
Yes, that. Yeah, we didn't have a name, so I could say what I wanted, you know. And I bloody well did. I would come at the, you know, and then I could see the faces glaze over, you know. I think, oh, gee, you know. And I've met up with some of those people, some of the students, you know, various things. I say, oh, gee, you know, you've mellowed a lot, you know. But I've just seen the world in a different place, you know, and I think that's what we do as, you know, I mean, it makes some people, I know people of my age that are still so angry and still really kind of want to cut your throat kind of thing. Or, but it only, you know, I could only feel it was only eating me. And when I hated white fellas, I'd say to my mother, I hate white fellas. And she'd say, well, you're hating part of yourself, you know. And then I would come out with outrageous stuff about who the white fellas that I didn't know, the background to, you know, why did they do that to our women in the frontier? You know, I'd come out with this kind of, because, you know, my history stuff was kicking in, and, you know, I'd say, you know, Mum, I don't know where my white blood comes from, because, you know, they're cattle station owners and stuff who denied us completely as Aboriginal women and children. I said, but you know what? I do pray it's Irish. That's a joke, you can laugh at that. I don't know where that white blood comes from. People sort of, but no, and I don't. And that's probably part of my reconciliation journey at one stage, you know, to track the ancestors and find out the white side. But I'm not ready for that yet, you know, still too much to do here. Although, you know, I had a couple of people ring me up. This was before the social media and stuff, and they'd ring me up and say, are you the Aboriginal activist? And I'd say, yes. And they'd say, oh, we might be related to you. And I said, no, I don't think that would be possible. How would that be possible? And, you know, I've had so many people even slam the phone down on me when somebody rang me up and said, I heard you on the radio. I said, oh, yes. And I said, look, do you realise I'm Aboriginal? And then the phone went down, you know, the phone would go down, and all that. They didn't want to know. But maybe now, I don't know. I do see a resurgence of people want to find out, like the Cherokees, you know, in the States, who want to find out if they had Aboriginal blood. And I sat next to a woman the other week. She was on the plane with me, and she said, my father started talking, and she said, oh, my father would never speak to us. He was so ashamed, but we think we had Aboriginal blood, you know. So there's all that stuff that needs to be, that's the truth telling, isn't it, really? And people to heal in our country, to tell the truth and, you know, find out where they, you know, where they really do come from. But, yeah, long-winded answer, but I think as we grow older, we come to terms with a whole lot of stuff in our life, because we know the bookends are getting pretty close there at that end. And, you know, we just want to, anybody see Stan Grant on Compass at all? That's a really good show. You should have a look, because he's turned into a theologian. I don't think it's going to happen to me, but his philosophy about, you know, he had that really hard time with racism in the media, and he's come the whole full circle. And, yeah, so some of his stuff is just really very embracing, you know, but, and I probably feel I could be going down that road a bit too, but yeah, and I've always been a believer in that, the allyship that we have between each other is so important, you know. My mother was an activist here for the 67 referendum in Brisbane, okay? In those days, we only had 3 support groups: the churches, the trade unions, and heaven forbid, the Communist Party. They were the 3 of our allies. Now there are millions, you know, nearly 7 million, if not more, that come along with us. People call them accomplices as well. I think that's a bit criminal, but I don't know. I'm trying to get comfortable with that term, but it's a bit more than allies and friendships, you know. But it's people with goodwill in their heart that want to do the good stuff with us. And really, that's what my mother did all her life. She had two white women in the struggle. They were like Jessie Street from Sydney, and Mum had Mrs. Muriel Langford and Mrs. Joyce Wilding, who were great mates. When the days in the 60s, you know, 50s, 60s, it was not even fashionable to do that stuff. And they would get called all sorts of things like, you know, N lovers, and yeah, they would be threatened, but they still came along with us. And I saw that at a very basic level, and I thought, there's possibility in that, you know. We can't do it alone. What are we, 3% of the population? Yeah, we need to bring, you know, good people on board with us, our allies. And I think that has grown. I really do, despite the referendum. We forget about the little marginal mob there that hate us, that Ku Klux Klan and, you know, neo-Nazis who will forever hate us. But, you know, we just get on to do it. And I was over in the States when the referendum came down, and our reconciliation executive, she rang me, young woman, and she was crying over the phone. I said, hey, hang on. Listen, this is not the first time or the last time anything like this is going to happen to us. You know that? So we just keep fighting. We keep fighting, and we just keep getting on with the positive things that we can really do around all the stuff. We don't dwell on it because it will eat us. It will eat us alive if we do that. So that was my message to her, and she's quoted it ever since, you know. So that's nice. I guess it must have hit the mark. But you come to that when you've had so much, you know, joy, but so much hate and so much disappointment in your life. You know, you come to that assumption that things can only get better because you can't dwell on things that are going to eat away at you. And everyone should do that. I'm sure you do, you know. Yeah, food for thought.
We've got a question from Robbie, I think. And before he speaks, Nick wanted to know if you wanted to show the Mayor Simpson video.
Oh, yes, so she got it there. This would be
she's
lovely.
Shared it with me, but are you happy? We'll get Robbie to ask his question.
Oh, yes,
and we'll
Robbie.
Get it ready.
Hello, Robbie.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, not so much a question. I just sort of wanted to say, you know, we're privileged to hear your story this morning. It's always, yeah, such a warm feeling when we get to listen to our old people that have done so much for us mob and continue to do that. I just sort of want to echo some of your work around the truth-telling stuff and how important is that, how important that work is, because yeah, my grandfather actually was a part of the group in Cherbourg, and sort of, you know, I watched him throughout that whole time of being so excited to tell the story, and then also, I guess, very, I don't know how you explain it, but upset about the inquiry being cancelled, and sort of missing that opportunity to, you know, to tell them sort of yarns, and I just think it's so important, because when I was reflecting on that, you know, like my pop and his parents, they faced so many, you know, I guess, adversity in our community, and really for his age group, you know, I think he was so, you know, he was ready to tell that story because you know, his parents and his grandparents didn't get the chance to do that. And I guess, you know, just, you know, looking at the work, you know, that you hope to continue to carry on, I think it's so important, especially for that age group, for their stories and their parents' stories to continue to be told, and also passed down, you know, to the younger generation. But it's also important that it's, you know, people like yourself and all them old people in those groups, that they're not just telling stories, they're telling, you know, their family stories too, you know.
Yeah.
And that's sort of that, you know, the relation to the truth telling. But yeah, I thought just wanted to echo how important it is, and yeah, if I was there, I'd give you a big hug and say thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Robbie. And look, I didn't catch up with you after your presentation at Lowager. This young man and another young lady gave a brilliant presentation. Some of you may have been there, but I was so proud of what you'd done. And gee, mate, you're a future leader. I can pick 'em. And you certainly are. And I'm glad you're working for us too.
That's it.
Which is great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Robbie.
Despite how many job offers he had at the end of that.
Oh,
seminar.
is that right? You better not leave us.
Right, I'm gonna try and
Bring it.
share this. No pressure, Sharon.
Here we go.
Oh, except my sound is off, I think.
Oh,
I think because. Yeah, but if I take it off mute, I'm gonna get lots of back.
oh,
Can you mute on the screen?
How do you do that?
It'll come forward. Mute. See if that works. Just mute.
I've got this on.
All right. Go. You can mute there.
for that, Sharon. That's better.
But also to share with others,
No, that's okay. I can send it to you, Moana. Are you logged in?
Yeah.
Sorry, go around the house.
That's all right. And while we're doing that, you know, what we've seen the last local government elections, like the amount of younger mayors. In fact, my nephew's in Moorabinda, he's 41. You know, he's a young mayor, Mayor Simpson as well, but he comes to it with this whole perspective. He knows about IP and governance and, you know, really worldly stuff that we know about and like. And he's such a community man. He just he's worked with Uncle Eric too there, Robbie, your grandfather and your grandmother, grandmother Shirley, and together they, I hope they don't mind me saying this, but they ran on the Yes campaign and he overwhelmingly got in, and Uncle Eric was a great advocate. So, you know, and it was, remember when most of the blackfellas wanted Yes, right? Mistrust and misinformation that went against us. But I'm glad Mayor Simpson got in, not only for that factor, but because he's such an incredible young man. And they have a ration shed there. If no one has been to Cherbourg, you should go and see that ration shed. It's a historical precinct, and they've put all the archives from that truth-telling stuff in there, I believe. So so it's all happening right there. But the young mayors across the state are just amazing. Young woman up in the Torres Straits, Elsie Surriott, she's doing great work.
Moana, go
Access
to window.
Yeah, looks like we got it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Bruce Simpson, Mayor of Cherbourg, Aboriginal Australia Council. Congratulations, it's launched today. Truth-telling in the Cherbourg community is important because it begins the healing process of our elders. It starts to reclaim our stories and our history, but also to share with others of our stories and history and what it means for us to tell it. Partnership between Cherbourg and the University of Queensland is important because it's about our research and our truth And it also is an example to our younger people that education and now education is important. The Sherbrooke community is excited to be partnering with the Wisdom Council of Indigenous Knowledges.
Right, yeah, and these are the, some of the, well, mostly with Sherbrooke and, Stradbroke, but particularly with Sherbrooke, we've got a real, opportunity there. You know, it's so easy to be able to access. We've been up there a couple of times to access, the community and the mayor, who's really right behind us. So if you ever need any community contacts and stuff, anywhere, really, anywhere, I'm sure that, you know, we could just ring me up, and I'm sure I could provide you with someone if you need to have that edge or a bit more knowledge around that. So, yeah.
We did have a question online. Is it okay if we do contact you after the webinar? Someone would love to ask you some questions and get your opinion on their thesis, working with First Nations incarcerated and previously incarcerated women.
Oh, yes, that's one of my specialties, I suppose, among some. Yeah, I'd love to, yeah. So you've got, it's just the usual, you know, j.huggins@uq.edu.au. The stuff, I had that same address 30 years ago, so I kept it, which was nice. And it was really easy to get onto the system then, you know, like my friends have taken weeks to get on the system and the onboarding and all that, don't even go there. But I got on the next day, which was nice, kind of a bit of an advantage. Yeah. Okay. So how was that?
Please join me.
Yes, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lots of thank yous coming through.
Oh, lovely. Where's the hearts? I like a few hearts too. No, it's good. Have a good day, everybody. Good week. Lovely. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
There's some hearts for you.
Oh, lovely.